How do you survive in a hostile world? What you are about to hear is not safe. It is not comfortable, but it may be exactly what our comfortable, distracted age needs most desperately to hear. The Hovamol, the Ballad of the High One, sits within the Poetic Edda, a collection of Old Norse poems preserved in a 13th century manuscript called the Codex Regius, the crystallized wisdom of a people who faced the harshest conditions imaginable. A culture where survival through winter was never guaranteed, where violence was an everyday reality, where death was ever present. The text presents itself as the direct speech of Odin, the All-Father, the god who sacrificed himself to gain wisdom. But what makes the Hávamál extraordinary is that despite being over 1,000 years old, it cuts through our modern pretensions like a chef's knife. The wisdom inside is undeniable. The Hávamál is a collection of proverbs, narratives, and magical formulas that grew organically over centuries. Within its 165 stanzas are 5 distinct sections: practical wisdom, observations on women's faithlessness, Odin's quest for the mead of poetry, advice to a man named Lord Fafnir, and finally, a catalogue of magical charms. This patchwork nature reflects how real wisdom accrues, not in clean, systematic treatises, but in the messy accumulation of hard-won insights, bitter experiences, and rare moments of clarity. This is wisdom earned through blood and betrayal, through triumph and loss, through the unforgiving school of human experience. From its opening stanza, the Hávamál establishes that we live in a world of potential enemies. Within the gates ere a man shall go, full warily let him watch, full long let him look about him, for little he knows where a foe may lurk and sit in the seats within. This is not paranoia, this is not pessimism, this is realism in its purest form. The early sections deliver practical counsel, whose psychological impact is razor-sharp. Consider how it frames the value of silence and observation. The knowing guest who goes to the feast in silent attention sits. With his ears he hears, with his eyes he watches, thus wary are wise men all. This is the foundation of real power, the discipline to observe before acting, to gather information while revealing nothing. As Francis Bacon noted, knowledge itself is power, but the Hávamál understands that knowledge is gathered in silence, not in speech. The text relentlessly emphasizes moderation, especially regarding alcohol. Less good there lies than most believe in ale for mortal men. For the more he drinks, the less does man of his mind the mastery hold. In a culture where drinking was both a social necessity and potential disaster, this is extraordinary clarity. The Hávamál values mental sharpness above all else because in a dangerous world, a clouded mind quickly becomes a dead one. But perhaps most striking is its unflinching view of human relationships. This is not the realm of unconditional love or universal brotherhood. This is the sophisticated calculus of reciprocity. To his friend a man a friend shall prove, and gifts with gifts requite. But men shall mocking with mockery answer, and fraud with falsehood meet. A moral value that Nietzsche would recognize. Beyond good and evil, on the precision of appropriate response. Be loyal to the loyal. Be treacherous to the treacherous. This is not relativism, but moral precision in a world of wolves and sheep. Yet even in this harsh pragmatism, moments of surprising vulnerability and human connection emerge. The mighty Odin himself confesses, "Young was I once and wandered alone, and naught of the road I knew. Rich did I feel when a comrade I found, for man is man's delight." Even gods cannot escape the pressure of existential solitude, the fundamental human need for companionship that overshadows everything. Our social nature is undeniable, the understanding that isolation diminishes even the strongest among us. Shakespeare captured this paradox in King Lear, where the mad king finally understands his connection to others, only after losing everything. The Hávamál gives us both the hard-edged independence needed for survival and the recognition that meaningful life requires connection. But at the core of the Hávamál, we find its most profound confrontation with mortality. A passage whose brutal clarity still takes the breath away. Cattle die, and kinsmen die, and so one dies oneself. But a noble name will never die if good renown one gets. Cattle die and kinsmen die, and so one dies oneself. One thing I know that never dies, the fame of a dead man's deeds. What is this? This is fire. This is the scorching realization that you, yes, you, will die. Your possessions will crumble. Your body will fail. Even your bloodline may perish. What then? What remains when everything is stripped away? Only this, what you have done. Not what you have said or thought or felt or planned, but what you have actually done. The Hovamol offers no heaven, no salvation, no eternal reward, only the unblinking challenge. Will your deeds be worth remembering? Will they talk about you after 2 millennia? Will all of the grandchildren of tomorrow praise your name and thank you for your gifts? This existentialist stance predates Sartre and Camus by a millennium. It demands that we create meaning through action in a universe that offers no inherent purpose. As Charlie Chaplin said in his Great Dictator speech, we all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. But the Hovamol adds the crucial element Chaplin omitted, that this help must be embodied in concrete deeds, not abstract sentiments, and it starts with you. And then, in its most mythically powerful section, the Hovamol recounts Odin's self-sacrifice to gain the runes, also known as symbols of magical power and wisdom. I ween that I hung on the windy tree, hung there for nights full 9. With the spear I was wounded, and offered I was to Uthin, myself to myself, on the tree that none may ever know what root beneath it runs. This is the brutal truth that real wisdom costs everything, not coins, not effort, not time, but yourself, your preconceptions, your fantasies, your illusions, your delusions, your certainties. You must be willing to die to what you were and be reborn like a phoenix. None made me happy with loaf or horn, and there below I looked. I took up the runes, shrieking I took them, and forthwith back I fell. Notice, shrieking I took them. True knowledge is not a gentle epiphany. It's a scream in the dark. It tears you apart before it remakes you. It destroys everything you loved and thought you were. Carl Jung understood this when he wrote about the necessary encounter with the shadow self. But the Hávamál goes further. It tells us that to truly know, you must be willing to be unmade, piece by piece. We got used to having information at our fingertips and knowledge with no cost, opinions without sacrifice. But the Hávamál stands reminds us that we do not truly know what we have if we don't pay for it with pain. Yet even after this sacrifice, the Hávamál delivers its most disturbing insight. A measure of wisdom each man shall have, but never too much let him know. For the wise man's heart is seldom happy, if wisdom too great he has won. This is the existential cliff edge, the recognition that complete knowledge might be unbearable, that seeing too deeply into the abyss might leave you unable to live. And if you gaze long enough into an abyss, the abyss will gaze back into you, as Nietzsche would say. Plato's cave dwellers kill the one who has seen the sun, but the Hovamol suggests something more terrifying, that the one who has seen too much might envy the cave dwellers their shadows. Is ignorance really bliss? Leonardo da Vinci wrote, "The greatest deception men suffer is from their own opinions." The Hovamol goes further, suggesting that the greatest suffering might come from seeing through all opinions to the reality beneath. This is why the final charm of the Ljóðatal remains unspoken. An 18th I know, that ne'er will I tell to maiden or wife of man. The best is what none but oneself doth know. Some truths cannot be given, they must be earned, and some are too dangerous to speak aloud. And then, the way the Hávamál treats love affairs may seem a misogynistic caution, but it is rather a brutal lesson in expectation versus reality. Odin recounts his failed seduction of Billing's daughter. "Billing's daughter I found on her bed, in slumber bright as the sun. Empty appeared an earl's estate, without that form so fair." His desire is met with disappointment. "At morning then, when once more I came, and all was sleeping still, a dog I found in the fair one's place, bound there upon her bed." It looks like romantic frustration, but it is a lesson about expectation versus reality, about the dangers of projecting our desires onto others, about the inevitable gap between what we wish for and what is. George Carlin captured this modern dilemma when he said, "The reason I talk to myself is because I'm the only one whose answers I accept." The Hávamál would add, "And even your own answers will often be wrong." What makes the Hovamol so jarring to modern sensibilities is its unapologetic survival ethics. This is not meant to bow down to our modern comfortable times. This is the ethics of extremity, the code by which one navigates when the stakes are life and death. Consider its advice on vigilance. Away from his arms in the open field a man should fare not afoot, for never he knows when the need for a spear shall arise on the distant road. Or its perspective on begging. Better a house, though a hut it be. A man is master at home, his heart is bleeding who needs must beg when food he fain would have. This is not the ethics of someone who has never known hunger. This is the voice of experience speaking to the bone-deep humiliation of dependency. The contradiction with modern sensibilities is not a flaw in the Hovamol. The Hovamol should make us think if we deserve our unprecedented luxury. We can afford universal moral principles because most of us are insulated from true hardship and scrolling on Instagram. The Hovamol reminds us that our moral certainties and superiorities might not survive first contact with genuine adversity. As Spinoza observed, peace is not the absence of war, it is a virtue, a state of mind, a disposition for benevolence. The Hovamol would add, and this virtue is only possible when your survival is not at stake. The final section of Hovamol, the Ljótatal, consists of 18 magical charms, spells for healing, protection, binding enemies, and mastering love. To modern readers, this might seem superstitious nonsense, but to dismiss it is to miss the profound worldview it represents. For the Norse, reality was permeable to will and word. The right knowledge, properly applied, could alter the fabric of life. Some of you might think this is primitive, but it's an entirely different ontology, a different understanding of the relationship between mind and matter that missed from your arsenal of tools to thrive in this new world order. The charms include practical powers like a third I know, if great is my need of fetters to hold my foe, blunt do I make mine enemy's blade, nor bites his sword or staff, and a seventh I know, if I see in flames the hall o'er my comrades' heads, it burns not so wide that I will not quench it, I know that song to sing. Knowledge, the right knowledge, paid for with sacrifice, can give one mastery over otherwise uncontrollable forces. As Nietzsche proclaimed, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. The Ljótatal takes this further. What nearly kills you might make you supernatural. So what does this ancient text demand of the modern reader? Not academic appreciation, not scholarly distance, not cultural relativism. It demands that you live as if your deeds matter. It demands that you face reality without flinching. It demands that you pay for your wisdom with sacrifice. It demands that you judge carefully who deserves your loyalty and who deserves your guile. It demands you to know how to live like a barbarian, like a gladiator, like a soldier, but one that thinks like a philosopher king. It scourges our modern tendency toward endless rumination. The unwise man is awake all night thinking of many things. Careworn he is when the morning comes and his woe is just as it was. How many of us lie awake, spinning thoughts that change nothing? How many exhaust ourselves with worry instead of acting decisively? How many mistake information for wisdom, opinions for knowledge, words for deeds? Too many, unfortunately. In an age of endless distraction, the Hovamol's emphasis on presence and attention cuts like a blade. Wits must he have who wanders wide, but all is easy at home. At the witless man the wise shall wink, when among such men he sits. This is not about travelers. This is a fundamental principle, that different situations demand different behaviors, that wisdom lies in adaptation rather than rigid principle, that awareness of context is the beginning of intelligence. And lastly, the final truth of the Hávamál is not a comforting one. It's that beneath our technological marvels and social sophistication, we still live in Odin's world. Yes, our dangers wear different faces. Yes, our spears have transformed into different weapons. But the fundamental realities remain unchanged. Trust must be earned. Words mean nothing without deeds. Moderation preserves power. Knowledge demands sacrifice. Death comes to all. Only memorable actions transcend death. Cattle die, kinsmen die still holds true. Your investments will falter. Your loved ones will perish. You yourself will die. What then will remain of you? There's no gentle reassurance, no promise of eternal reward, no cosmic justice. Only the challenge that appears to every human being no matter the timeline. Make your deeds worth remembering, or be forgotten. The choice, as always, is yours. And this kind of freedom is strange indeed. If we accept our mortality, if we acknowledge the transience of all things, we can focus on what truly matters, the quality of our actions, the impact of our choices, the legacy of our deeds. The Hovamol may be an antidote to our aimless and debilitating societal acceleration, a perspective both ancient and immediate, both specific to its culture and universal in its insight. I've shared with you today not a comfortable text, not a reassuring collection of platitudes, but a challenging, contradictory, sometimes disturbing manual for navigating reality as it is, not as we wish it to be, because it is what it is. You can't argue against nature or reality. You can either let it drag you or drag yourself and run with the natural rhythm of life, as Marcus Aurelius would think. Perception and action. That's the mindset you want to integrate. The Hovamol offers us what we need most in our age of comfortable illusions, the bracing slap of truth, the hammer smashing all bugs from our map of knowledge and wisdom. It's not the soothing voice of your therapist, but with the urgent command of the battlefield general, the weather-beaten sailor, the scarred survivor. It tells us, be vigilant without being paranoid, be generous without being exploited, be loyal to the loyal, wary of the rest. Know that your words mean nothing if your deeds contradict them. Understand that wisdom has a price and it must be paid. Accept that you will die, and let that knowledge drive you to actions worth remembering. The Hovamol's greatest gift to us is not comfort, but clarity. The unblinking assessment of reality that allows for genuine action rather than wishful thinking. In a world increasingly dominated by comfortable fictions and algorithmic bubbles, this ancient text cuts through the noise with its blood-bought wisdom. As you leave here today, I ask you to carry one verse from this text with you, one hard truth that touched you, that reminded you of one of your experiences. Let that be a talisman against self-deception, a touchstone for clear thinking, a reminder that across the centuries, across the cultural divides, across the technological revolutions, the fundamentals remain constant. And perhaps, like Odin himself, you will find that the greatest wisdom comes not from comfort, but from struggle, not from certainty, but from questioning, not from safety, but from risk. For as the Hovamol tells us, the lives of the brave and noble are best, sorrows they seldom feed, but the coward fear of all things feels, and not gladly the niggard gives. Thank you. I am irrevelato. I am irrevelato. I illuminate the lives and stories of the world's greatest luminaries, mythic figures, and oftentimes gods. The secrets you deserve to know, the fire of Prometheus, the apple, the light, the knowledge, the wisdom, through darkness to illumination. This is what we do here. I strike the hammer on everything, philosophy, psychology, religion, science, art, and everything related. For those new here, welcome to the depths. To returning viewers, you know who I am, what I do, and why you are here. You know this is not always fun, but somebody has to do it. Although I must admit that I do have a lot of fun doing what I truly love. If you value raw truth over comfortable lies, if you're ready to strike the hammer too on surface knowledge and get to the pulsating core of wisdom, you're in the right place. Subscribe to Irrevelato and join us in illuminating what others fear to face. See you soon, dear friend.